Welcome to DeProgram. I'm Michelle Witte. I'm here with my dog barking on cue, and also Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
You know, Lupe's mad about tariffs. We're all mad about tariffs, apparently.
Yeah, you can say that again.
So,
My IRA is very mad about tariffs today.
Yeah, man, it hasn't been fun to watch.
No.
Seems like that's what we ought to talk about, right?
I'm looking at the final numbers. The Dow lost almost 1,700 points. The NASDAQ lost more than 1,000 points. The NASDAQ. And the S&P down 275. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Should we... Probably everyone has figured it out by now, but do we want to talk about the way the Trump administration appears to have alighted upon these numbers for various countries?
That would be great. Yeah.
Did you take a look at the math?
Well, I'm particularly very deeply concerned about our longstanding trade deficit with Lesotho.
Oh my God.
Who apparently they were the top target of the Trump tariffs in terms of percentages. For people who don't know, Lesotho is a very strange country. It's completely surrounded by South Africa.
Yeah.
So, and it has a strange and weird history, and it's desperately poor.
Desperate.
It's not like anybody there doesn't want to buy stuff. They just don't have any money.
Yeah. So, of course, they export to the United States far more than they import, and we buy from them diamonds, for example, and other raw materials and minerals. They also are in an economic bloc with other African nations. So they have a set tariff rate that they share with all of these other nations. But none of that was taken into account when these tariffs were created, because they just used one formula for goods. It was, okay, you guys tell me, because it was basic. I don't remember if it was our exports divided by their imports, then divided by 2 equals tariff rates, or if I've heard people say it is the tariff, the tariff deficit, then divided by their exports to give us this magical number. And they just went through every single, apply this formula to every country except countries that already have tariffs applied to them.
Unless you're the UK or Australia and you have side military equipment deals, and then you get 10%.
Yeah.
Now, very interestingly, Israel got a hike. I noted that they got a 34% rate in a hike. I mean, one of the defining factors, I think, of a lunatic government is when they have complete ideological inconsistency, even to the point of self-preservation. Not to compare them with Nazi Germany, but hell, let me compare them to Nazi Germany. In 1945, the Reich is collapsing. They need trains to send troops to the front, but instead they use them to transport Jews to the ovens. That was more important to them. And, it kind of tells you everything you need to know. Here, again, it's like Israel's a close Trump ally, and he's slamming them with a 34% tariff. Mm-hmm. Far be it from me to defend the Israelis, but still.
Well, exactly. We don't care, right? Don't care at all, whatever the tariff on Israel is. Nope. But it just seems to show no one in this administration seems to be capable of doing any kind of research on anything at all. They take one formula, apply it across the board, and then are surprised when they come up with ridiculous situations like this one with Lesotho, right? Or Lesotho, whatever it is. They've done this consistently, right? Yeah. They thought anyone involved with protests against Israel must be like a militant jihadist, and went and picked up the most mild-mannered, rule-following guy they possibly could as their first big collection, DHS collection, in the figure of Mahmoud Khalil. They, it was the Biden administration that just blanket pardoned a bunch of people. So apparently this is not a partisan issue. But yeah, they've just decided this is the way it's going to be. We'll just calculate this as a blunt instrument, and it'll be totally fine. Yeah. And you end up in the dumbest possible timeline.
Yeah, and exactly what's happening.
I don't know if all of our 401ks are going to rebound. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if markets are going to correct, but it does feel to me like if these tariffs stay in place, right, who is going to be affected? It's going to be any small business that doesn't have deep pockets or wide margins, right? And so all this does, I mean, like, leave aside sort of the how individuals are going to be affected, right? And who's going to be affected most by this sort of tax. All it does is sort of ensure, again, that like only the biggest and most powerful and strongest survive. And so you just further this trend toward, you can have any channel you want as long as it's Comcast. You know, you can have any soda you want as long as it's ultimately produced by like Viacom or whatever. And the people who are setting this situation up are the same people who would say, oh, well, the problem with China is that you can't just have one party. You can't just have any social policy you want as long as it comes from the Chinese Communist Party, you know? And this has been sort of an economic trend for ages. I remember, this is something we didn't get to talk about, and it's a minor story, but it illustrates, I think, the larger point. There was like a revolution in, I think, the state of Idaho in terms of how much insurance ski resorts have to carry. Because I guess some guy went skiing and hit a tree, went off a ledge, whatever. And historically, courts have always said, hey, skiing is dangerous. Everyone knows skiing is dangerous. You can't hold ski resorts liable if you break your leg while doing this dangerous sport. Well, they reversed that, right? And so generally speaking, right, I'm on the side of individuals collecting, right? Ever since like the tort reform and the McDonald's coffee story, I think you have to look very, very carefully when someone's trying to tell you that a small individual is trying to screw a large business. But what this will do is just ensure that only the biggest ski resort businesses and only the biggest like ski chains can stay in business, because the smaller businesses are not going to be able to afford this insurance. And it just, all of it runs contrary to what we are simultaneously being sold as the American dream and our great freedom and our great, economic freedom and, the choices that we have. It's depressing.
I would have loved to have, if I could go in a time machine to 1960, I'd say impose these tariffs to save the Rust Belt, but we can't, and it's too late. And we can't squeeze the toothpaste back into the tube, and we can't reindustrialize the place where I grew up in Ohio. And it's not, it's finished. I mean, this is fighting the last war, clumsily fighting the last war, and and I always like to judge plans based on sort of, let's assume charitably that everything goes exactly the way that the Trump administration hopes. So in short order, we will have a lot of American businesses that are going to be doing a lot better than they used to. A lot of foreign businesses are going to be pushed out, or their market share is going to decline. And these American businesses are going to hire new workers, some new workers. That's basically right. That's what they hope for. That's the best case scenario. And okay, so what does that look like? Well, now you don't have foreign competition. So why would these American companies not just, raise their prices even further in order to as much as the market would bear? I mean, I don't want that to be true, but that is true. That's exactly what would happen.
And look, what's that going to do to inflation? I mean, already the Republicans are apoplectic about inflation, that it's an, historically unprecedented 3-point-something%, which of course is absurd. But now we're going to have real inflation because of this. Look, a $40,000 car today is $50,000 tomorrow for no reason. It's just a tax.
Unless it's a Ford. Ford is all Fords are on sale. Apparently, they have a lot of backstock they're trying to unload, and they see this as a big opportunity.
And I'm sorry. Let me just finish Ted's comment there. Fords are made in the United States and Mexico and Canada, and same with Chevys and General Motors and Toyota and Hyundai and everything else. All the big manufacturers have plants internationally. They're all over the place. And some parts are made here, other parts are made there. They're manufactured here, they're assembled there. How do you begin to put tariffs on things like that? Are you going to put a tariff on a Ford because part of it's made in Canada? Or what are you going to do then about the Toyota that's made in Kentucky? Or the Mercedes that's made in Alabama, where all the Mercedes SUVs are made. South Carolina, where all the BMW SUVs are made. What are you going to do with those?
What the question? Right. The question is, what is an American car?
That's right.
Is it assembled here? Does it have 50% more or more of its parts made here, but it can be assembled elsewhere? Is it 60-30? Like, what is it? No, the Trump administration doesn't seem to know.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing is, again, as you were saying, Ted, I got no problem with protection, right? But this is clearly not intended. If you were going to do that, it would be a multi-year process. There would be some investment. Like the idea that we can just throw up factories in a matter of days to replace these different parts that are coming, like a bunch of little embroidery hoops for a small business that I happen to know of, right? Like nobody's making those, and no one's going to start making those with the money that they don't have, the businesses that they're now going to have to close. And this is, again, it's like clearly not designed to improve our well-being in any way. But what it will do is consolidate economic power in fewer and fewer hands.
I mean, further to your point, Michelle, there's also, the businesses need to plan. So even if today an investor is like, man, I'm going to build me some factories in the old Rust Belt and hire back all those fired workers. Yeah. Well, they don't know who the president's going to be in 3 years. And trade policy will likely go back closer to the way it looked under Biden than stay the way it is now. You can't count on this staying this way. In fact, you can probably count on it not remaining this way. So it's not going to encourage investment.
No, it's not.
So is Trump insane, and or is there a method to the madness? What's he trying to do here?
I think he's trying to force every other country in the world to negotiate a deal whereby he can declare victory. That he forced these countries to stop stealing from the American people. He forced them to the negotiating table, and, free trade be damned. It's gone. This is a 1920s era Republican Party policy, and it failed. I mean, these guys just don't know history.
I mean, you could be forgiven. It's just extortion, right? It's just sort of like policy by extortion. And you might be forgiven for, or the Trump administration maybe might be forgiven for thinking it might work, because it has worked with every big American company, right? Like every day there's a new law firm that's offering $100 million of pro bono work to Trump's pet causes for absolutely no reason, right? How many Ivy League universities have decided to allow their Middle Eastern departments or whatever to be restructured according to the Trump administration's whims, right? So there's been no resistance in the United States.
To have written checks for, to settle lawsuits that they would have won.
Yeah, there's been no resistance here. So I'm looking at this landscape and thinking, all right, well, let's go for it. I'm not talking about the people who are in the streets, of course, but no resistance from any of the entities with any power to actually resist. So yeah, why not see if you can twist the arms of every country on Earth, including Lesotho and some unpopulated Australian island?
Yeah, that have only penguins on them,
right? Yeah,
well, they've been getting it free. They've been freeloading for too long, John.
Penguins.
Yeah, exactly. So we're always saying,
who they think they are.
Yeah,
I don't know who's going to negotiate for them.
Yeah,
exactly.
It is though. I will say, I was walking home. I was thinking about this. I was sort of listening to different analysis, and I don't know, man. Part of me just thinks, I kind of wish Trump had just been allowed to do what he wanted to do the first go around. And maybe we wouldn't have gotten the truly maybe insane, second version. He wasn't talking about this the first time, was he?
Not to the best of my recollection.
I mean, I feel like with the first time you had I don't know. I felt like Trump's his few positive impulses were more on display now, and this version of Trump is giving nothing to the rubes. You know what I mean? Absolutely nothing. It's 100%. It's the sort of Elon Musk camp, the Peter Thiel camp, the sort of billionaire camp, and nothing for, I don't know, the people from the holler or whatever who voted for him this time around. And I say that not to be disparaging to those people, but like clearly one side of Trump's base has won, and it's not the side that I was hoping for.
Well, I mean, so speaking of Musk, right? The White House has confirmed that Musk is going to be on his way, as previously promised. I guess in May, late May, he'll be gone. By Memorial Day, he'll be gone. I don't know if Doge will be gone, but he kind of is Doge. So,
yes. Although they say no, there's some other administrator whose name we can never remember. She is a woman.
Right. Maybe she's hanging with the penguins. I mean, so is that, I mean, is this going to be just this, we're going to look back and be like, man, those first 6 months were crazy, but then things calmed down later. I mean, the thing is, everybody's scared to death, right? I mean, because right now, I think this country has mad jitters because, I mean, the man in charge is so unpredictable. I mean, this is Richard Nixon's madman theory on acid.
You know, Putin complained about that the other day. Putin actually, in response to a reporter's question, said that ideologically he agrees more with Trump than he agreed with Biden or Harris, but that Trump is so unpredictable that it just makes it bad for everybody.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I would imagine it would be just absolutely terrifying. And then what is the right response to this? By anyone, as an individual, if you're a Democrat, if you're a European president, what are you supposed to do here? I mean, you're supposed to negotiate with Trump. What are you supposed to do?
That's the question, Ted. In the Senate, a handful of Republicans said that they would work with Democrats to try to roll back just a small number of these tariffs. Nobody's objecting to the tariffs, across the board. Just, we don't want to make, the British angry and the Israelis angry, et cetera, et cetera. But I looked for statements today from the Democratic leadership on Capitol Hill, and I saw nothing. There is no leadership.
Yeah, because the bipartisan push, such as it is, I'm pessimistic about it succeeding. Is basically predicated on this is a loss of power by the legislative branch, right? That constitutionally the president doesn't have the power to do this, and the tariffs have to be ratified by Congress. So they'd be trying to claw back a little bit of the power that they've given up to Trump. Maybe. I mean, is that where the hope is?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the challenges to this are going to be legal, right? They're going to be because it's another sort of dubious state of emergency that Trump has declared that, in his mind, in his words, gives him the power to impose these tariffs. But I don't know from what direction these lawsuits are coming, and if there are members of Congress who are sort of prodding them along at all. But you'd think if they were, that they would say something about it and take some credit.
I mean, executive orders are fast, Yes. But lawsuits are slow.
Sometimes.
Lawsuits are always slow.
Well, you can speed them up if you want to. It has happened. It depends on if it's the apple of any justice's eye.
Yeah.
We'd like to appeal our motion to amend our objection to the previous motion to continue.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they've worked pretty fast when it comes to stopping planes full of or attempting to stop planes.
Well, speaking of which, right? I mean, we lost a gay hairdresser into the belly of that Salvadorian prison. I don't think they got him back, did they? And
they haven't gotten anybody back, have they?
And the government literally, their argument in court is they're admitting, we shouldn't have sent him. We lost him. He's not even ours, and the Salvadorians don't even really know where he is. Mm-hmm. They're claiming that the Salvadorians don't really keep track of who's in there.
That's right.
I'm sure they don't. I mean,
too many people.
It is what is it? 40,000 people?
Yeah, 30,000 people.
Yeah.
Add 400 to the batch next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everyone's got their head shaved.
Yep.
Right.
How about the guy with the autism tattoo?
Oh,
that
no.
was misidentified as a gang tat, and he was sent to the El Salvador prison.
Yeah, I mean, again, some of the justifications, again, it's pick one thing, apply it across the board, decide that the Michael Jordan air symbol, the jumping man, as it's called, I guess, in DHS documents, is gang affiliated, and anybody who's too ardent a Michael Jordan fan is liable to be picked up and sent overseas. It's I don't know. We've used all our adjectives by now.
Yeah.
Or adverbs.
This is bad all around.
Yeah.
And when Congress refuses to push back, it weakens the entirety of the government. And we're seeing no leadership or very little leadership from the courts.
Did you enjoy Cory Booker's record-setting speech?
I did.
I've seen applause for that and saying somebody's showing some backbone. Good for him. Wouldn't have guessed it would be Cory Booker, but glad to see somebody doing it. And then I've seen other people saying this was all grandstanding and all for show. And there was an opportunity.
Of course it was. It wasn't a oh my God, I have a master's degree in legislative affairs and I can't think of the word.
It wasn't a filibuster.
Thank you. It wasn't a filibuster. Sorry. It wasn't
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yeah, I'm in Iceland and it's late and I haven't been sleeping well and I am not myself today. It was not a filibuster. It was a speech. Mm-hmm. And so he wasn't blocking legislation. He just saved himself a huge block of time that Chuck Schumer agreed to, and he was able to speak. I'm glad symbolically that he spoke slightly longer than Strom Thurmond did when he did filibuster it was either the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act.
It was the Civil Rights Act.
Civil Rights Act. But I think this was more about Cory Booker running for president in 3.5 years than it was anything else.
100%.
Yeah.
And of course, careful people who, not only marvel at his amazing stamina, and as an older gentleman, I'm like, man, he didn't have to pee all that time. That's amazing.
He must not have taken his meds, seriously, because God knows at his age, he's on some kind of meds that invariably are going to make him need to pee.
How old is Cory Booker?
He's like 50. He's 54, 56, something like that.
He's probably
55.
Probably has a urologist, or
sure.
He doesn't now. He will soon.
The first question when you go in for any exam is how many times you get up in the night to pee. Yeah. The first question.
Well, he's doing a good job. 25 hours. Right?
I'm impressed.
He must have had a bottle under the lectern
or not. He put on a Depends. Yeah, he put on a Depends. He had to have,
like a murderous astronaut.
Gosh.
Exactly.
It's kind of awesome. I kind of would like to see something, meatier, like an actual filibuster, which wouldn't even be really that big a deal.
No,
but do it. Just really, truly do it. People noted that he didn't have a word to say about Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
No, not a word.
Of course.
Which is funny because he has a significant Muslim population in northern New Jersey.
Yeah.
And you would think that he would have said something about Gaza, but not a word.
Well, of course, he's one of the biggest recipients of Wall Street money. So I'm sure that plays into his calculus there. I don't think he's a major contender for 2028. Do you?
No. He wasn't in 2016. He tried for a minute, if you recall.
Yeah, he did.
There were so many people who ran that they had to do the debate over 2 nights. Remember that?
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even picked up Rosario Dawson to date him for a little while.
Is that true?
Yeah, you remember she was dating him. Yes.
Oh,
beautiful Rosario Dawson. They went out for like a year or two, but I think it was during the campaign.
Well, he's very charming.
I have heard. He's got incredible game.
He does.
Like a sort of Bill Clinton, you're the only person in the room kind of charisma, which you would not.
There's one thing about him that I do. I mean, I hate his politics, but I do admire him. You know, like he sustained some very serious injuries rescuing his neighbor from a fire when he was mayor of Newark. He was walking by and he ran in and saved a woman who was in a house, and he sustained third-degree burns over a lot of his body.
Wow.
And when he ran for president, his staff wanted to create some ads, promoting that, and he absolutely forbade it. He said, like, I want to win or lose based on my ideas. I don't want to, pull the people's heartstrings.
Don't make me like
that's pretty
Cory
cool.
Booker. I know.
I like him as a person. I just hate his politics.
I do too. I like him as a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's like I'd let my daughter date him. It's like my older.
Maybe not now. Maybe not now with his urology problems.
My non-existent.
We all know are impending.
Yeah, easy to say when you don't have one.
Hey, can we talk for a minute about Greenland?
Sure.
There was a piece in the Associated Press today quoting multiple White House officials saying that Trump is 100% serious about taking Greenland, and he refuses to rule out the use of force. But then at the end of the article, it made an interesting assertion, and that was that the only way they could do this legitimately is to allow a referendum. There are 58,000 people who live on Greenland. They are, of course, Danish citizens because Greenland is some sort of a protectorate or whatever, Commonwealth of Denmark. And I can't imagine that any of those people would want to walk away from Denmark and join the United States because they get all of the benefits that a Danish citizen would get, including free education anywhere in the European Union, free healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And they're also heavily subsidized. But what Trump is preparing to announce is that he will double Denmark's subsidy of $500 million, and he'll give those 58,000 people $1 billion. Now, they would lose their free education. They would lose their free healthcare, but somehow this $1 billion would be spread across 58,000 people. And the White House seems to think that's a winning strategy. I am appalled that this is happening. So
I have to do some back of the envelope math. How much does that come to per Greenlander? Do we know here? So, let's see. $1 billion divided by 1,000 is $1 million. So divided by 50,000.
That is $17,241 per person.
That's not
okay. That is it's not very much money. It is
not to sell your entire country, and apparently the cost of living is quite high there.
It's quite high because literally everything but fish has to be imported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
like I said,
it's not a good deal.
Yeah, it's not. I'm in Iceland right now, which actually has a really good economy. They're taking tons of refugees, but it is so crazy expensive here that it shocks me every time I go into a restaurant. I walked past a Subway, Subway, the $5 footlong, right? So the footlong here in Iceland is $35.
What?
But I mean, it's not 35 American dollars.
Yeah, American dollars.
What's the exchange rate? It's 35 American dollars.
Yeah.
It's the euro, right?
No, they use a krona because they're like the British. They didn't want to give it their. Yeah, so it's. I looked this up last night when we went to dinner. It was 1,000 krona is $7.50. But I went and had a piece of fish, and it was 18,000 krona. That's 18 times $7.50 for a little 4-ounce piece of cod.
How good was that cod?
It was actually really great. really
yeah,
delicious.
yeah.
But still, oh my God.
But this is the thing. You can afford high prices if you don't have to have, $30,000 socked away in case you get sick.
Yeah, exactly.
And earn $1 million by the time you retire. You know what I mean? Like, so you can.
64% of American bankruptcies are because of medical debt.
It's the thing, like if you live in a country where you are going to get some kind of retirement benefits, right? You're going to get a pension and you are not going to die. You're not going to die preventably for a lack of money. Then
Right.
you can live paycheck to paycheck if you want to.
That's
Yes.
worth a lot more than $17,000.
Yes.
I mean, it might be worth more than $170,000.
I'd give you $17,000 for that.
I was talking to the driver that took me from the airport. It's the airport is like 50 miles away. It's in Keflavik, and there are these buses that run all day and all night, and they're $17. But this company that I'm here with gave me a car. The taxi is $200 to go from the airport, $220. So I was talking to the driver yesterday, and I recognized immediately he had an Arabic accent. So I asked him where he was from. He said he's from Syria. Syria by way of Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Oman. He finally got a Schengen visa, or was approved for a Schengen visa in Oman, and it happened to be for Iceland. And I said, how do you like it here? And I'll tell you, man, it was 81 when I left Washington. It was 31 when I arrived in Iceland. And I've been here 6 times, and I've never seen the sun. Literally. I've literally never seen the sun. It's always either cloudy or pouring down rain or snow. So he said to me, how do I like it? Well, he said, this is a typical summer day in Iceland, 31 and rain, or freezing rain. And I said, yeah, but seriously, how do you like it? And he said, well, the people are really nice, which is true. And I said, but it's crazy expensive here. And he said, that's the thing. He has a brother who was somehow lucky enough to get a refugee visa and now lives in Oklahoma City. And he said that his brother rents a big house in Oklahoma City for $1,200 a month. This guy, his wife, and his 2 kids rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Reykjavik for $3,000 a month. And I said, but surely they have to give you, like, there has to be some kind of assistance. And he said, yeah, they give us enough money so that we can pay the rent and pay for food. There are no homeless people in Iceland. He said, not one. And even if there were, they couldn't live in these conditions.
Right.
But he said, they give us enough that we can live. They're generous and they're nice about it. But he said, you can't do this over the long term. It's just not tenable.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, $1 billion for Greenland.
Not going to go very far.
So, yeah. I mean, there's got to be also just national pride, right? I mean, it seems like the Greenlanders
I was thinking the same thing.
They want independence from Denmark, and all the polls show that they don't want to join the United States.
Right.
I mean, you know what I'm going to ask.
The United Nations just accepted a couple new countries, last summer? Or is it now the summer before last summer? These little tiny islands in the Pacific, like Nauru, for example. Some of these countries have, 30,000 people, 16,000 people. Mm-hmm. So if Greenland were to vote for independence, 58,000 people being the entirety of a sovereign nation is not unprecedented.
No. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't want to be part of the U.S.
It does not.
And wouldn't it be smarter? Here's the thing: if Trump wants influence over Greenland, why do you have to own? Why don't you rent?
Exactly.
We're already renting a space. Why do we have to occupy it?
That's right.
We're playing a game of Risk here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
I read recently, and I don't remember where it was that I read it. Probably Raw Story, because they would be the only ones that would print it. But they said that he's obsessed with the idea of adding territory. He wants to be the first president since Eisenhower to actually add territory.
God. So in order to
run the territory he already has.
Right.
In order to protect Greenland, we all do have to start saying Gulf of America and hope that will be enough for him.
Yeah, because then it's going to be red, white, and blue land if that stupid congressman from Georgia gets his way.
That's fucking dumb. The tariff story, the taxi story, the driver story, I mean, it does take us back to the tariff conversation, because that has been the deal in America, right? You can have cheap goods, right? We're not going to give you a social safety net. We're not going to provide Social Security, okay. But we're not going to really provide for you to live comfortably when you're older. We're not going to provide for you your health care, but you can get a TV for $50, right?
Yes.
You can buy whatever fucking crap you want. And now you're going to take that away and not replace it with anything except, I guess, patriotism. I would like to see, this is a violation, right? Like, I want to see people in the streets over other things, but this is a total violation of the one, sort of bucket of slop that we were given in exchange for basically handing over actually our freedom and actually our democracy, Because
this goes back to, when this globalization trend, led to this bipartisan policy of deindustrialization in the 70s and 80s, and, and before and after, but, especially then, there was kind of a decision made in the, among the elites that Americans were no longer going to be workers. They were going to be consumers. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know, they'll figure out some way to make money to buy things. But first and foremost, that was going to drive the policy. Mm-hmm. Well, we're no longer workers. I mean, the New York Times just ran a piece about how basically Gen Xers, all think their careers are over. That's an entire generation of tens of millions of people. Yeah. And basically, a lot of them are still in their 40s and 50s. And they basically, when people in their 40s and 50s think that they have no future, that's a prescription for serious social unrest. Mm-hmm. And so you add that to, well, now you're not even going to be a consumer. You're not even going to be able to buy anything anyway. No. That's going to be, that's third worldizing this country. That's exactly the opposite of making America great again. I've got to think this. I think Trump's going to crash and burn sooner than we thought.
It depends on how much power people can bring to bear and who's going to join. We have seen that none of the sort of biggest companies, educational or legal entities are prepared to join any kind of actual resistance to Trump and this agenda. So we're going to have to see if people find a way to make common cause in the absence of all of these sort of unifying things that we've allowed slip away from us or had wrested from us, right? Like unions, like, I don't know, churches, social halls, whatever, right? Like the sort of steady alienation and atomization of the American population is really helping them right now, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think there's plenty for people to rally around, but we're not in the habit of doing that. And we, the sort of entities that already have any power have very clearly chosen their side. And I'd like to see it, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's a lot riding against it.
I don't understand why no leadership. Don't care. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's no leadership from the Democrats. Nothing. No. Nothing, not a word.
Because they don't have anything to lead us toward except, I guess, NAFTA again or whatever. Because the Democrats, they don't have actually an ideology. That was the problem. They don't have a sort of economic vision. They don't have I think that sometimes the criticism of identity politics can go too far, but that is what they have had for the last decade. So they first have to figure out, what are we leading people toward? Because it can't be toward 2015. You know what I mean? It was, everything was rotten then. We were in the midst of an opioid crisis. They can't lead us back to that. And they don't have any place they're going. You want to go to Ezra Klein's new abundance agenda that is just absolute horse manure. Mm-hmm. So
Democrats haven't had an agenda, a real ideology since the Johnson administration. I would say George McGovern was the last hurrah of a presidential candidate who, had big ideas. He wanted socialized medicine. He, the equivalent of Medicare for all and all that. That's the end. After that, the Democratic Party hasn't proposed an anti-poverty bill since the Johnson administration.
Yeah.
Proposed.
That's true. Proposed. They don't even have the guts. That's right.
Never mind, he introduced one in Congress.
Mm-hmm. Never forget that Joe Biden got an incredible amount of credit for having the child poverty rate. Remember when he expanded the child tax credit, got all that credit for doing that, and then they watched it sunset and didn't bother to deal with Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema, the Democrats who stood in the way of it.
That's their way, right? Like the
Yep.
assault weapons ban. They just let things sunset.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
And
right.
so we have, Trump's jolly band of, true believers and the, folks who've been strong armed into it. They're going somewhere. I don't know where, but they're going somewhere.
You know what I would love to see? I mean, this is a pure Ted Rall fantasy. Is, remember the Texas Republicans, and it's happened in other state legislatures, where they were the runaway Democrats. They decided to deny the Republicans a quorum so that they couldn't conduct business under the rules of order, and they took off, and they were in hiding, like in motels in Louisiana.
Yes, I remember that.
And the state was actually hunting them down. Sending out the Texas Marshals to look for them and arrest them and drag them back to Austin. I mean, the Democratic members of the House and the Senate could do that. They could just decide, this is a great time to be in southern France. Bye. And there's nothing that could be done. I mean, it would be like the Republicans couldn't do anything. Yeah,
it's true.
I have a question. True. I have a question from the chat that caught my eye. Because, Ted, when you were saying, why do we have to buy Greenland? Why can't we just rent it? Of course, my thought was like renting it is you do it the quiet way. You get the CIA in there. You know what I mean? You fill it full of spies and influence peddlers, and you get things to go your way without actually having to point a gun. And somebody in the chat is asking kind of a similar thing. Do we think that there will be operations run in Greenland to try and facilitate Trump's foreign policy? I don't know.
Yes. You mean a military operation?
No. Something much softer. The very first covert action program that the CIA ever implemented was to steal the 1949 Italian election from the communists. And they did that in a very kind of quaint way. They sent $150,000 in cash to the Conservative Party, and it was earmarked to pay off Italian journalists. And I could see them doing the same thing in Greenland. You just kind of pay everybody at the local newspaper and the local radio station and swing public opinion.
A few fat envelopes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everybody has an envelope or gets an envelope.
But
sure.
I don't look. I've never been to Greenland, but from what I've heard, I mean, they're kind of like these are people. They might not allow themselves to be rolled that way, right?
I hope that's right. And
they're pretty. I mean, people who live there.
Yeah, they're very hardy and very self-sustaining, and almost everybody is involved in fishing in some way or another.
Those are hard people.
Yeah. It's cold all the time. Commercial fishing's the most dangerous job in the world. Yeah.
I mean, my grandfather was a fisherman.
We're not gonna roll over.
All on the high seas, and don't fuck with him.
My great grandfather was eaten by a shark off the coast of Rhodes.
Wow.
My grandmother used to talk about it all the time.
I mean, it's funny, but I lived in the Hamptons, but the locals, they're fishermen. And, the local lore is that half the graves in the east end of Long Island are empty because all those fishermen have been lost at sea. The main highway is Lost at Sea Memorial Turnpike.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, they're tough people.
I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed at all this attention on Greenland because I've always wanted to go.
Yeah, I know, and they're ruining it for us.
I know. I don't want
Libya.
Don Jr.
I always wanted to go to Libya. I heard the
sloop
was like amazing in Tripoli, and then it was like they went and fucked it. Obama went and blew it up and destroyed
now all you can buy are slaves.
I know. Who needs those?
Yeah,
we'll be able to buy those here soon.
God. Have you guys seen that Laura Loomer is back in the news?
No. What is she back for?
Our girl, Laura Loomer, banned from basically every delivery app for being racist and rude, who once chained herself to Twitter headquarters and nobody cared. She answered the question, like, what would happen if I changed myself to Twitter headquarters and nobody cared? But and there was this interesting, I forget if it was a New Yorker or New York Times piece a while back that followed Laura Loomer around as she attempted to hang out with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And it did seem as though she got the blow off over and over and over. And it was a little bit pathetic. But on the other hand, you've had all these pieces that say like they're having some clandestine, affair or whatever, and that Laura Loomer is actually influential. Well, apparently, I mean, and she's a very vocal part of the sort of anti-Elon wing of the Trump coalition. Apparently, she was the driving force behind the firing of 3 National Security Council officials. Laura Loomer went to the Oval Office, spoke to Donald Trump. She brought a list of people who she said had been disloyal to him. And a bunch of them got fired. Mike Wall's not among them. And I don't know if we believe that Trump is trying to figure out a way to fire him, or if he really just wants to just let this go and for people to forget about it. But
don't forget,
there she is back in the scene.
Mike Waltz got caught using Gmail also,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to Signal, to transact official business.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, it is funny. Laura Loomer, not the worst person in the Oval Office right now, which is saying a lot. I mean, she's a pretty gross individual, but
she's absolutely
the voice of reason.
Awful. Oh.
She's the better half of two very bad sides. I would say Laura Loomer is on the not the worst one. I wouldn't choose either, but since that's what's in the White House, I would like the sort of Loomer Bannon team to be ascendant rather than the Musk team. I've said it over and over. Like I wish.
Michelle, something happened near me here where I'm talking to you here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan that you kind of alluded to, sort of, it reminded me, it happened yesterday. So speaking of people chaining themselves to gates and stuff, 4 Jewish students chained themselves to a gate at Columbia University in protest of the treatment of Mahmoud Khalil and other Columbia students, and the administration's, not giving a shit about what happened to their own students and graduates. These students were locked to a gate that has been locked by the administration for a year. It's at Broadway and 117th Street. It is locked. It has been locked. Anyway, the NYPD responded. They cut them loose, and they were charged with obstructing the entrance to the university.
Oh my God.
Now, I don't know how that's possible. And they asked about this, but these gates have been locked for over a year. And, the NYPD was like, we don't know. We were just sent here, which I'm sure is true. We were just told to arrest you. That's it.
Wow.
I don't know. How much lower can Columbia University sink? You know what I mean? Like, it's just erase it, write it off. It's gone. It's ashes in our mouths. I don't want to hear.
And I graduated.
It's irredeemable.
I'm on their list of on their list of famous alums. That they
cool.
That is cool.
It is kind of cool. It was kind of cool. I'm so ashamed. I mean, if they offered me a job, I don't even know if I could take it. And I need a job. I probably would. But I mean, but at the fact, I shouldn't have to think about that.
No.
They've managed to, that's the thing, coming full circle here. Michelle, you talked about these big institutions, and that's the thing that scares me. Like, it's kind of like LBJ once asked, well, what else is the presidency for? Then he was talking about the Civil Rights Act, doing big things, using power, spending political capital. What else is the presidency for? Well, what else is having a $15 billion endowment for? If you are like Harvard or Columbia or Yale, and you can't tell all comers, fuck off and die.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what good is having 1,000 high-priced white shoe attorneys working for you at Paul Weiss or Skadden Arps if, some pipsqueak orange fuck shakes you down for $15 or $100 million or $25 million? I think it's 15 and 100, right? I mean, it's like, if you're rich and powerful, the point of being rich and powerful is that you don't have to do what people say. If Columbia University had put out an appeal and said, we just lost $400 million in federal contracts. We're going to have to do all sorts of cuts unless you alums, shake out the sofa cushions. I know that I've never donated to Colombia. I would donate. Everybody would donate. I mean, they have hundreds of thousands of alums who would spend money, and they'd probably make more. I mean, I don't understand I don't understand the
it's almost like
cowardice.
The chant, no war but class war, is not aspirational and just a description of the present. And what is unfortunate is that we seem to have to learn every single time over again who is and who is not going to come and save you. You know what I mean? Every single time you have to learn that it's not going to be the equivalent of Trump University. It's not going to be the equivalent of Perkins Coie or whatever.
Right.
It's not going to be. It's not going to be NYU. It's not going to be Harvard. It's not going to be a good billionaire. You know?
Yeah, like Ralph Nader wrote that book about the good billionaires. Yeah. We have to save ourselves, and it's hard, and it's risky, and it's dangerous.
And you also have to save some people who you don't really like. You know what I mean? Like you might have to go to bat for some people who you think are unpleasant or creepy or whatever, have some bad views. But there's not really an option, right? Like, because the only thing that you have is numbers in this case.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. But numbers is the only thing that's ever changed things. You know, I mean, every revolution that has prevailed over superior arms, superior military, superior training, superior finances. Even if the target government was in crisis. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's always been about numbers, and we just don't. We have the numbers, but we don't have the organization to put those numbers together.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. Agreed.
Which again, I guess, is why why third parties are so suppressed in this country, because they could provide a way of organizing, right? A tent pole.
Right. Mm-hmm. So. That's right.
Or we're all moving to China. They got the numbers there.
And speaking of foreign countries, we've got a little bit of time left. We've got to talk about foreign policy for a minute. So Donald Trump said day before yesterday that he was willing to bomb Iran back into the Stone Age if they don't sit at the negotiating table. That is not the way that Iranian leaders respond. Mm-hmm. They are not North Koreans. The Iranians are willing to talk if the other side shows respect and treats them as an equal across that negotiating table. Donald Trump's not willing to do that. So what do you think? Are we headed toward a war with Iran?
I don't know, man. It's one thing to give Israel the green light to continue to demolish Gaza, which of course is ongoing and is, revolting. It's another to actually start a war with Iran, right? Like that would be, you'd have Americans dying very quickly. Yeah. And I don't know who actually in Trump's camp right now is dying for this war. I don't know. There's not because we said last time, right? There's not a Pompeo figure. There's not a John Bolton figure. There must be somebody, but I don't know who it is.
I think I hope I'm wrong. I believe don't hold me to it. I believe this is a bluff. I think this is a Trumpian bluster. Come to the table. Otherwise, I'll fuck you. That's what this is. But
I really hope you're right.
I hope you're right. Yeah. I could be.
But
that gives me pause is we've recently begun sending naval assets, and that could be to support a bluff. Mm-hmm. But that's how both the first Gulf War and the Iraq War started, was with the redeployment of naval assets.
I mean, of course, the Israelis attacked Iran, and nothing much happened.
No, the Iranians were so patient. Michelle and I talked about that on our old show at length. The Iranians showed real leadership in that back and forth.
Yeah.
To the point where Iranian citizens were taking to the streets declaring that they wanted immediate retaliation, and the government told them to back off.
So maybe Trump's calculus is, they're wusses. They won't do anything.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, hasn't been wrong yet, except, of course, when we're talking about the Houthis in Yemen. And They are. I think they are pretty much at the maximum of what they are capable of doing, which has been significant. But I think that's it. But there hasn't been a challenge.
What about the EU, right? I mean, the EU still seems to try to be getting Trump to, I don't know, not cut Ukraine loose. But I mean, it's almost like they've lost the thread here. I mean, the purpose of the European Union was first and foremost to be a trading bloc that could match the United States in terms of its power, but also to be a political union that could serve as a counterbalance to American hegemony. And that really neither of them has panned out, but certainly not the political power. I mean, there seems to be no appetite in Brussels whatsoever to basically say, look, we'll drive the car now.
Yeah.
I mean, they let two American administrations destroy the European economies, of generally speaking, right? Take away their source of cheap energy. So that was it, right? And then they're in the same doldrums that we are. So it's sort of like with what army, It is funny to remember.
Maybe Trump's giving it to them because, today's the first day that the U.S. dollar dropped like a rock. And,
did it really?
Yeah, the euro is trading high against the dollar.
It was $8.35 2 days ago. Do you know what it is now? I didn't look.
I do not, but I was just watching it today because I have an account in Europe, and it was like, oh, that's good news for me.
The dollar is 0.9 euros right now.
Okay, so it's $1.10, $1.11. That's a significant
drop.
Yeah. The dog wants you to wrap things up.
I think she might. Yes. Yeah. It is funny
for a walk. Let me bite Trump.
Yes, she does. She would. It is funny to remember that at one point the EU was supposed to be some kind of counterbalance to the United States, because I mean it just has been like an extension of U.S. soft power or U.S. power for some time now, right? Like it's shocking.
They're lick spittles. I mean, if anything, all it's done is now when the U.S. wants to tell the Euros what to do, they only have to make one call. They used to have to make like 15.
Yeah.
It's like a 3-dog battle going on in my apartment right now. There's one trying to go for a walk. There's one already outside, and there's my dog here. Nightmare.
Oh, well.
Is that our cue, guys?
I think that's our cue.
Yeah,
that may be it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks for bearing with the dog. This has been your deprogramming. We'll be back. Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye,
Bye, everyone.
Okay.